The first thing that felt wrong wasn't the sound. It was the silence that came after it. I had just reached the narrow clearing when everything stopped at once. The insects, the distant wind through the branches, even my own breath seemed to hesitate. 1 second earlier, the forest had been alive in its usual meaningless way. The next, it felt as if something massive had leaned in close, listening. I stood still, my boot half sunk into damp soil, the beam of my headlamp cutting a pale tunnel through the trees. Somewhere behind me, far enough to be vague but close enough to matter, a branch snapped. Not the careless crack of an animal passing through. This was slower, deliberate, as if weight had been shifted on purpose. I didn't turn around. I already knew what that sound meant, even though my mind refused to give it a clear shape. The rules of the forest were simple. If something wanted you to hear it, it did. And if it didn't, you never knew it was there until it was too late. I took 1 step forward instead, pretending control still belonged to me. The clearing opened just enough to reveal the old watchtower ahead. Rotted wood, a slanted roof barely standing. That had been my destination all along, or at least that's what I told myself. In truth, I had been moving without a real plan for nearly an hour, guided more by instinct than logic, trying to convince myself that motion was safety. Behind me, something exhaled. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, it was calm, patient. The sound slid under my skin in a way no growl ever could. My fingers tightened around the handle of the knife at my belt, even though I knew how useless that gesture was. Steel meant nothing out here. Tools were for problems you could understand. This wasn't that. Another step echoed behind me, matching my pace exactly. That was when I realized the worst part. Whatever followed me wasn't rushing, it wasn't curious, it wasn't afraid. It already knew how this would end. The forest seemed to narrow as I moved, branches leaning inward, shadows overlapping until depth itself felt unreliable. I focused on the watchtower again, forcing my thoughts into something practical. If I could reach it, climb it, gain height. Height meant visibility. Visibility meant control. Or at least the illusion of it. The snapping sound stopped. That terrified me more than anything else so far. I stopped walking. The beam of my headlamp trembled slightly as it swept left, then right. Tree trunks passed through the light like pillars in an abandoned cathedral. Nothing moved. No eyes reflected back. No shape broke the darkness. Just an animal, I whispered, though I didn't know who I was trying to convince. The forest didn't answer. I took another step, then another, quickening slightly. The watchtower grew closer, its silhouette clearer now. The ladder hung crookedly from the side, missing 2 rungs near the bottom. I could climb it anyway. I always could. I'd done worse things than that in worse conditions. A low sound rolled through the trees. This time I felt it before I heard it. A vibration deep and steady, resonating through the ground and into my legs. Not a growl, not a warning. More like acknowledgement. I spun around at last. The light caught empty space. But I knew with absolute certainty that I was no longer alone. My pulse hammered in my ears as I slowly backed toward the ladder, never letting the darkness behind me leave my peripheral vision. Every survival instinct I had screamed that turning my back fully would be a mistake I wouldn't get to regret. The stories I had laughed at earlier that day surfaced uninvited now. Local warnings, half-serious legends about wolves that didn't behave like wolves. Wolves that didn't chase because they didn't need to. Wolves that learned. I reached the base of the ladder and hesitated. Climbing meant noise. Noise meant revealing myself completely, but staying on the ground meant something else entirely, something worse. I placed my foot on the lowest rung and tested it. The wood creaked, old and brittle. The sound echoed too far. From the edge of the clearing, the darkness shifted. Not fast, not sudden. It simply rearranged itself. A shape detached from the shadows, taller than it should have been, moving with a fluid certainty that made my chest tighten. The headlamp beam brushed across fur, thick, dark, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. The eyes caught next, pale, focused, unblinking. The wolf didn't snarl, it didn't bare its teeth. It just watched me as if measuring something already decided. I froze, one foot on the ladder, one still on the ground, caught between two terrible options. The forest felt impossibly quiet now, as if every living thing had withdrawn to witness what came next. The wolf took a single step forward, and in that moment I understood something with horrifying clarity. This wasn't a chance encounter. This wasn't territory defense. This wasn't hunger. This was a meeting that had been coming for a long time. My breath came out in a thin, controlled stream as my mind raced through impossible calculations, distance, speed, height. None of it mattered. Whatever rules I thought applied here clearly didn't. The wolf's presence bent them, reshaped them, made them irrelevant. I climbed. The ladder groaned under my weight, each movement loud enough to feel like a confession. I didn't look down. I didn't need to. I could feel it there, perfectly positioned, perfectly calm, waiting to see what choice I would make next. Halfway up, the ladder shook. Not violently, just enough to let me know it could. I stopped climbing. Above me, the watchtower creaked softly in the wind. Below me, something ancient and intelligent decided whether I was worth the effort. That was when I realized the truth I had been avoiding since the forest first went quiet. I hadn't walked into the wolf's territory, I had stepped into its story. And it wasn't finished with me yet. The ladder stopped shaking. That silence was worse than the movement. It meant the wolf had decided something, and whatever that decision was, it no longer required urgency. My fingers burned where they clutched the cracked wooden rungs, my arms trembling from the effort of holding myself still. Below me, the forest waited, holding its breath in a way that felt intentional, rehearsed. Slowly, carefully, I continued climbing. Each rung complained under my weight, a dry, brittle protest that echoed far too clearly in the open space of the clearing. I kept my eyes fixed upward on the platform of the watchtower, refusing to look down again. Looking down would make it real. And somehow, if I didn't fully acknowledge it, I could pretend I still had time. The platform was barely wide enough for two people to stand comfortably. When I pulled myself over the edge, my knees hit the warped planks hard enough to send a jolt of pain up my legs. I crawled forward instinctively, putting distance between myself and the ladder, then turned at last and forced myself to look. The wolf stood at the base of the tower. It hadn't moved far. It didn't need to. Up close, it was larger than I had expected. Not monstrous, not unnatural in the obvious way horror stories describe, but undeniably wrong in scale. Its shoulders sat higher than my waist would have if I were standing beside it. The fur was dense and uneven, scarred in places, as if it had lived many lives and survived all of them. its head tilted slightly upward, eyes locked on mine with a focus so intense it felt like pressure. It didn't look angry. It looked curious. Not the shallow curiosity of an animal reacting to novelty, but something slower and deeper, as if it were watching to see whether I would finally understand the role I was supposed to play. I backed toward the center of the platform, my heartbeat loud enough to drown out the wind. The watchtower swayed faintly beneath me, reminding me how fragile my refuge really was. I had height, yes, but height meant nothing if the structure itself decided to give up. The wolf sat down. That single action sent a chill through me, colder than fear. Predators didn't sit unless they intended to wait, unless they knew time was on their side. Its tail curled around its body with deliberate calm, eyes never leaving me, never blinking. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time lost its edges. I tried to slow my breathing to regain some sense of control. Panic would only make me careless, and carelessness would end this faster than anything else. I scanned the forest around the clearing, searching for movement, for more shapes detaching from the darkness. There were none. The idea that this wolf might not be alone had been terrifying. The realization that it was alone was worse. A memory surfaced then, unwanted but persistent. Something an old ranger had said years ago during a night spent around a campfire, half joking, half serious. He talked about wolves that learned people the way people learned maps. Wolves that understood patterns. Wolves that didn't hunt bodies but decisions. Some of them, he'd said, staring into the fire instead of at us. They don't chase. They wait until you choose wrong on your own. At the time, I'd laughed. Now perched on a rotting platform with nothing but empty air and broken wood between me and the forest floor, the laughter felt like an insult to something that had been listening. The wolf stood again. My muscles tensed instantly, every nerve screaming at me to prepare for movement, for impact, for anything. But the wolf didn't rush the tower. It didn't jump. Instead, it began to circle the base slowly, unhurried, its paws barely making a sound on the damp earth. It was inspecting, learning. Each step seemed to map the structure above it, measuring angles, distances, weaknesses. The watchtower creaked again as a gust of wind pushed through, and the wolf paused, lifting its head slightly, ears rotating as it listened. It understood this place better than I did. I edged toward the far side of the platform, peering down to track its movement. The moment my shadow crossed the edge, the wolf stopped and looked directly at me again. A silent warning passed between us. Don't move where I can't see you. My throat tightened. I had come into the forest confident, armed with experience, gear, and the quiet arrogance that comes from believing knowledge is the same thing as control. The forest had stripped that away piece by piece, leaving me exposed in a way that had nothing to do with my physical position. The wolf lowered its head slightly, then did something that made my stomach drop. It sniffed the air, not randomly, not searching, confirming. Whatever it smelled seemed to satisfy it because it turned and walked back to the edge of the clearing, stopping just before the tree line. There it looked back at me one last time before disappearing into the darkness. Gone. Just like that. The sudden absence hit me harder than its presence had. The clearing felt too open now, too empty, as if something essential had been removed. I stayed frozen, waiting for another sound, another movement, anything to confirm that this wasn't some cruel test. Nothing came. Minutes passed. then more. Eventually, my legs began to ache from standing rigid for so long. The adrenaline ebbed, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I sat down slowly, never taking my eyes off the forest edge, listening to my own breathing echo in the hollow space of the tower. It would be easy to believe it had left for good, that I had somehow won without realizing it. But deep down, I knew better. Wolves didn't leave like that unless they had what they needed. And as I sat there alone above the clearing, one thought repeated itself with increasing clarity. This wasn't over. The wolf hadn't walked away. It had simply moved the story forward. I stayed in the tower far longer than logic justified. The rational part of my mind kept repeating the same argument. If the wolf had wanted to attack, it would have done so already. Height or no height, a determined predator could find a way. The fact that it had left meant I was no longer the immediate focus, but another part of me, older, quieter, and far more honest, knew that predators like that didn't abandon opportunities. They postponed them. The forest remained unnervingly still. No birds returned. No insects resumed their low, constant hum. It was as if the clearing itself had been instructed to remain silent until further notice. I checked my watch twice, then a third time, surprised each time by how little time had actually passed. Fear stretches minutes into something elastic and cruel. Eventually, the cold crept in. The higher I was, the more exposed I became to the wind, and without movement, my body began to stiffen. I forced myself to think clearly. Staying here forever wasn't an option. At some point, I would have to descend. And when I did, the forest would decide whether I was allowed to leave. I scanned the horizon again, focusing on details instead of shapes. Broken branches, flattened grass, subtle disturbances in the undergrowth, signs that something large had passed through recently. There, near the edge of the clearing, just where the wolf had disappeared, the vegetation was pressed down in a narrow path. Not chaotic, purposeful. A route. It hadn't left randomly. It had chosen a direction. The realization shifted something inside me. This wasn't about escape anymore. It was about prediction. If I could understand why it had gone that way, maybe I could understand what it planned next. I waited another 10 minutes, then another. When nothing changed, I stood, testing my balance as the tower swayed slightly beneath my weight. The ladder loomed at the edge of the platform like an accusation. Going down meant committing to a decision I couldn't undo. I started my descent slowly, controlling my breathing, placing each foot deliberately. The forest floor rose toward me with agonizing slowness. Every sound, wood scraping, fabric shifting, my own heartbeat felt amplified, broadcast into the darkness. When my boots finally touched the ground, I didn't move. I stood there listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, no sudden movement from the shadows. The clearing felt different now. Less like a stage, more like a hallway. A place meant to be passed through, not occupied. I stepped away from the tower, keeping my movements smooth and unhurried. Predators react to panic. Confidence, even false confidence, can confuse them. I followed the flattened path toward the tree line. The forest swallowed me almost immediately. The trees grew closer together here, their branches interlocking overhead, blocking out what little moonlight had guided me before. The air was thicker, damp with the scent of moss and old leaves. My flashlight beam cut a narrow tunnel through the darkness, illuminating only fragments of the world ahead. That's when I heard it. Not a growl, not a howl. Footsteps. Soft, measured, perfectly timed to fall just after mine. I stopped. The sound stopped. I turned slowly, sweeping the light behind me. The beam caught nothing but tree trunks and tangled undergrowth. No eyes, no movement. But the feeling, the unmistakable sensation of being followed, pressed against my spine. I walked again. So did it. This time I didn't stop. I adjusted my pace slightly, lengthening my stride. The footsteps matched me instantly, maintaining the same distance, the same rhythm. Whatever followed me didn't need to hurry. It wasn't afraid of losing me. I remembered then something else the ranger had said, his voice low, almost respectful. "When a wolf walks with you instead of toward you," he'd murmured, "it's deciding whether you're worth finishing." The path curved gently to the left, leading downhill. The ground became uneven, roots snaking across the soil like traps set long ago. I stumbled once, catching myself on a tree trunk, and the footsteps behind me paused, waiting. That pause was deliberate. It told me everything I needed to know. It could have closed the distance at any moment. It chose not to. I reached a narrow ravine where the forest floor dipped sharply, forming a shallow channel where rainwater must have once flowed. The walls were steep enough to slow movement, but not steep enough to trap me completely. As I stepped down into it, the air changed again, cooler, heavier. The footsteps stopped entirely. I froze, heart pounding. Silence returned, thick and oppressive. I turned in a slow circle, scanning every angle, every shadow. The flashlight beam shook slightly now, betraying the calm I had tried so hard to maintain. Then from somewhere ahead, a low sound rolled through the trees, not a howl, a breath, close, too close. I spun toward it just as a shape detached itself from the darkness on the far side of the ravine. The wolf emerged partially into the light, its body still half hidden by shadow, as if it were undecided about fully revealing itself. Its eyes reflected the beam again, brighter now, sharper. It had cut me off. I realized then that the tower hadn't been a refuge at all. It had been a starting point. And everything since, every step, every pause, every illusion of choice, had been part of a path laid out long before I ever entered the forest. The wolf lowered its head, muscles shifting beneath its fur, not in preparation to attack, but in readiness. It was waiting for my next move, and for the first time since this began, I understood the truth clearly enough to feel it settle into my bones. This encounter wasn't about survival anymore. It was about whether I could think like the thing hunting me. I didn't run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn, to sprint blindly into the darkness, to let fear take control and hope speed would be enough. But something deeper, something older than panic held me still. I had already learned the rule this forest obeyed. Running would not save me. It would only decide the ending faster. The wolf stood across the ravine, perfectly balanced, its weight distributed with effortless control. It wasn't crouched in a way that signaled an immediate attack. It wasn't baring its teeth. Its posture wasn't rage. It was calculation. I lowered the flashlight slightly, angling the beam so it no longer struck its eyes directly. Predators read intent. Staring can be a challenge. Looking away can be surrender. I needed something between the two, acknowledgement without invitation. The breath I heard earlier came again, steady and slow. Not hunger, patience. My mind raced, stripping away everything unnecessary. Fear, hope, even the idea of winning. This wasn't a confrontation I could dominate. It was a situation I had to navigate. I shifted my stance, planting my feet more firmly in the ravine's soft ground. The movement was subtle, but the wolf noticed immediately. One ear twitched forward. A micro-adjustment of its front paw followed. We were now fully engaged in the same conversation, one without words. I took a step sideways, not toward it, not away, just changing the angle. The wolf mirrored me, not aggressively, precisely. That was when I understood the final truth of the encounter. This wasn't a test of strength or speed. It was a test of awareness. Wolves don't chase what they already control. They push it, guide it, see how it responds under pressure. I forced my breathing to slow. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Every exhale carried a message. I am here. I see you. I am not panicking. The wolf's head tilted slightly, eyes never leaving mine. The distance between us remained unchanged, but the tension shifted. It was no longer tightening, it was evaluating. Seconds passed, maybe minutes. Time lost meaning. Then, without warning, the wolf stepped back. Just one step. It wasn't retreating, it was offering space. I didn't move. The forest around us began to reawaken almost imperceptibly. Somewhere far above, a bird stirred. Leaves rustled, not with intent, but with wind. The oppressive silence cracked, just enough to let the world breathe again. The wolf turned its body slightly, no longer squared to me. Its side became visible in the dim light, scarred fur catching the beam for just a moment. This wasn't a young animal proving itself. This was something experienced, something that had made these decisions many times before. Slowly, deliberately, it stepped back again, then another. I remained exactly where I was. Finally, the wolf turned fully away, disappearing into the trees with the same quiet confidence it had shown when it first appeared. No dramatic exit, no final glance, just absence, where presence had been. I stood there long after it was gone, muscles locked, mind struggling to catch up with reality. When I finally moved, it wasn't toward the path I had come from. It wasn't deeper into the forest either. I climbed out of the ravine and walked sideways through the trees, breaking the invisible line the encounter had followed. I changed direction twice more before stopping, just to be sure. Only then did I allow myself to breathe freely. The rest of the walk back felt unreal. The forest no longer watched me, it simply existed. By the time the tower came back into view, it looked smaller, less important, almost irrelevant. I never saw the wolf again, but I knew without doubt that it had not been a random meeting. The forest hadn't spared me out of mercy, it had tested me, measured me, and decided I was not worth the cost. That knowledge stayed with me far longer than fear ever could. Because surviving an encounter like that doesn't make you feel powerful. It makes you feel noticed. And once you've been noticed by something that lives by older rules than you do, you never walk through the world the same way again. Some nights when everything is quiet, I still think about that breath in the dark. Not as a warning, but as a reminder. I was allowed to leave, and that permission can always be revoked.